Hello there, my name is Laura Eastwood and I'm here to talk to you about a slightly different subject in regards to our week of summer secrets and all these amazing, wonderful, fun stuff that we're talking about. My subject is on anxiety and specifically the anxiety around travel and going on holiday or going on your trips. This is something that I have experienced time and time again, and even most recently on my last business trip last month. Just to give you a bit of background about myself. I'm 36 years old. My background is in dance and performing arts. I've been running my online album business for 5 years. I am a wife and I'm also a mummy to my 3-year-old boy. And my anxiety was around well before I had children, but I think was probably amplified after the birth of my son. So what I'm aiming to do in this video today is to first of all, let you know that if that's you, you are not alone and that this is completely normal. And secondly, to maybe help you out with a few little tools, things that I use, because I'm certainly not going to allow my fear to get the best of me. One of my favourite places I've ever been. I went to Australia for 2 weeks, just 2 weeks. I've been to India and travelled all around sort of the northern parts of India. Travelled around California as well for a good couple of weeks, did a big road trip around there. Went to Dubai with my little boy. It was his first trip away actually. It was just a real sort of chilled out holiday with family, which helped, I have to say. Vegas, of course. I go to Vegas every single year. Completely different type of trip. It's a bit of a business trip, but all these places are just amazing. And if I'd have let my anxiety get the better of me, I may not have experienced the things that I have experienced. That's one thing to really hold on to, is the reasons that you're going places. Let's not forget as well that some of these fears could be about things like the fear of flying. Now, this would be something that I don't particularly have myself. I think there are elements that I used to, but the more I've flown, the less I am concerned about that. But if you do have a fear of flying, there are obviously a little bit more that you could do. But we're going to be focusing on literally, just basic travel anxiety, maybe the build up to the actual travel itself. Just a few things that happened to me. On the lead up to traveling, sometimes it has been about money, like maybe the holiday still needs getting paid off, so it could be a money anxiety as well. Sometimes the fear has been I'm going to forget something really important, or because I haven't been to this place before, what's going to happen when I get there? If it's not all been like a packaged holiday where everything's sorted out for you. And I think that's a lot of my anxiety, because in the old days when I used to travel with my parents and we used to go on holidays, obviously they sorted it all out, but we always did package holidays. So your flight, your transfer, the hotel, and then on the way back, it was all sorted for you. And I think if that's not the case, sometimes that anxiety builds up. You think, oh, have I booked this? Or if I haven't booked a transfer, I've got to book a taxi. What if there aren't enough taxis? All those sorts of things. And I think that is what happens. And if you notice, what I'm actually saying here is going, what if that happens? Now, anxiety is a form of fear, and there's a great analogy for this of what fear actually stands for. And it can be false evidence appearing real, meaning that what happens when we're fearful of something is we start playing like a movie in our mind as to what we think is going to happen. And the movie plays literally as fast as anything, and you come to this ending conclusion, which could be a complete tragedy of the most awful things happening, and it hasn't even happened yet. You haven't experienced any of these things. It's just based on a what if, a probability in your head that you have falsely created. So as a result of this, our bodies physically go into fear mode. We might get sweaty palms, we suffer with headaches, we have a lack of focus, we really struggle to focus on one particular job at a time because our brain keeps coming back to this thought process. We feel overwhelmed with all the different things that we have to do, and sometimes we then just do nothing, which then results in last minute packing, last minute doing all of the jobs. So how do I overcome this? I have little tips and tricks which hopefully will help you, and these are things that I've learned only very recently through the course of doing a bit of personal development, reading, listening things, even just short YouTube clips, stuff that absolutely massively helps me out. So first off, And this is a really common one, which most of you are probably already using anyway, but let's keep using it, making a list. Now, I've even got my list here of notes for me of things that I want to talk to you guys about, but make sure you're making a list. Now, I actually recommend you make what I call a PPP list, okay? So you actually make these 3 lists. The first P is packing, like literally just what you're going to pack, which is what most people make a list for. What do you need to pack? Things like, you know, your adapter plugs, all little things like that you can think of, what you're physically going to need to get out and take with you. The second P is practical. So these are things that you might need to put in place for whilst you're away. Maybe you've got some deliveries coming, maybe you need someone to come around and feed the cat, or you have a pet to drop off somewhere. You know, stuff that might be happening whilst you're away, or for example, myself, I'm a dance teacher. I need to make sure I get classes covered, or, you know, you've let someone know that you're away. And then the last P, my favourite, is personal. So what things do you want to do, or do you need to do, or do you want to do to make you feel good? So that could be, for us ladies, getting our hair done, getting our nails done, maybe going and visiting someone before you go away, because maybe you're going away for a long period of time. But writing a list of personal things that you want to do. Now, obviously, earlier you write the list, the better, because then you can get it all ticked off. But I would say, if it's going to be a list that you make early on, try to only stick to a minimum, or maximum, sorry, of 10 items. That way you don't feel really overwhelmed. And if there are other things that you need to do and essentials that you think you might forget to pack, add on to them after you've kind of done the first few things. And the other top tip about list making is do the difficult tasks first. We love to tick things off, but if we do the simple things and think, oh, well, I'm halfway through my list, I'll stop and sit down and have a cup of tea. A lot of it's because we're avoiding the things that we find a little bit more painful, a little bit more stressful to do. So do the tough stuff first. Tip number 2 is to breathe. And not just any old breath, taking long breaths in and breathing out. So breathing in through the nose and out through the mouth. And another technique, a lot of yoga masters or people that do actually work with others with anxiety that I've read about is holding your breath. So breathing in slowly for a count of 6 to 8 seconds and trying to hold that breath for 2 or 3 seconds. And then try and release the breath as slow as you can and count as you're doing this. Why do we do this? There are 2 reasons. It focuses the mind, so you stop getting all these cluttered thoughts about other stuff and what you have to do. And the other reason about the holding the breath thing is a control element. A lot of the time when we start getting anxious and everything starts to spiral out of control is because we do feel out of control. And a lot of these types of conditions that we have that are in our brains, a lot of it is about control and needing to have that control and being able to hold your breath and breathe in slowly and breathe out slowly. You are showing yourself you have absolute control. Also, as we get anxious, we tend to maybe hyperventilate, you know, to the extreme. And I'm an asthmatic as well, so I do know that feeling of being out of control and not being able to control your breath and how overwhelming that is. And I've actually been able to avoid needing to take my inhaler just through focusing on breath. So that is a really, really key thing. So if you feel the anxiety physically bubbling up, you're getting sweaty palms, your heart rate's pumping, just stop, sit down, take a slow breath and take control. Tip number 3, one of my favourites, visualise. So if you're starting to get worried about this trip and even contemplating whether you should go on it or not, start thinking about the positives. The negatives are easy to think about. You've already done that bit, but think of the positives. Where are you going? What are you going to be doing? Why are you going? How will it feel being in those places? What is the positive outcome of this? And even coming home, because you can be anxious for the journey home as well. If you're like me and it is about the journey itself, then start thinking about seeing loved ones, getting back into your normal routine, maybe sleeping in your own bed, which you actually really enjoy, maybe thinking about your next trip. You've got to come home before you can go on your next trip. So start thinking about positives. Visualization and tricking the brain is one of the key things to creating success in absolutely anything, and that includes your traveling trips. Tip number 4, tell someone. I feel so much better when I tell my husband, say, just so you know, I'm feeling a bit anxious about traveling. I'm a little bit worried about where I'm going to go, or being really tired, or doing too much, or if I've ever had to go without my husband and my son. And I think any mums out there, that's probably one of the trickiest things to do, especially if you're a new mum. The first trip away from home can be really challenging. It's so important to speak to someone, and if you don't have a husband or a boyfriend or a partner to speak to about that, then speak to somebody, speak to a friend, somebody that you trust. Just let them know, someone who you know is going to listen to you. It might be worth telling them as well that they don't need to solve your problem. Just listen and just lend a supportive ear. Tip number 5, try distracting your brain. So the great thing about traveling on a plane is that they have movies to watch, especially if it's long haul. If it's short haul and you don't have that option, listening to an audiobook, something that really has to focus your mind. Music can be good as well if that really does distract you. However, sometimes music just starts making us think of other things. It can be thought-provoking, something that requires your brain to do an activity. Sometimes playing games, we all have like phones now, brain training games are great, things that are going to grow your brain, problem solving. So again, you're focusing your brain and you're distracting it from what's actually happening. If you drive as well, maybe listening to music or an audiobook, just making sure obviously that you are able to focus on where you're going. And that can be another thing you can do in driving. Are you focused on exactly where you're going? Are you checking signs? Do you need to stop to drink, to feed yourself? So make sure that you are distracting your brain, even when it's the smallest, practicalist thing. Just distract your brain from the fear that you might be feeling at that time. So those are my top tips, my top 5 tips really on just basic anxiety on traveling to and from. Obviously, anxiety can grow into something so much bigger, like I said, fear of flying. And I would definitely say seek professional help rather than allowing your fear to stop you from going anywhere at all. But there are a lot of things that you can absolutely do yourself through training your mind. So just lastly, to finish off with, I would love to recommend a few books and audios or things to look up that may help you just as they've helped me. So one of my favourites is this book called The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins. She has absolutely loads of YouTube clips, really short things. She did a course in January of 2019, all online on YouTube, called Mindset Reset, so definitely search that. And she is, she's done loads of research on the mind, and anxiety was one of her big issues as well, which kind of was stopping her from moving forward in her life. So that's a definite one. There's also a book called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Susan Jeffers, and that is an amazing book talking about how to deal with fears and being able to step forward, doing the things that you truly want to do and trying to get rid of those stories in your head as well. There's also a brilliant Netflix kind of, it's not a documentary, it literally is just watching Brené Brown talking. She's very famous for talking about vulnerability, and it's an absolutely brilliant Netflix. It's only about 1 hour and 15 minutes, and she's very funny as well, so if you like comedy, then definitely watch that one. And one of her best lines that she talks about in that, about speaking to other people, is starting the sentence like this: "The story in my head is..." And after that, you're realizing that it is just a story. And also sometimes saying it out loud doesn't make it seem so scary at all. But those are my top tips for dealing with anxiety. I am absolutely happy to answer any questions, so please feel free to get in touch. And maybe in the comments below, start sharing maybe your funny travel stories, maybe where anxiety has gotten the better of you. But even, more serious content as well, if it's something that has massively stopped you and this is something you desperately want to sort out, please comment them below. Just know that you are not alone. Thank you for watching.